What's up, people? Welcome back. We are the Matchmaker podcast here on the MMA Today podcast network. This is Max Freedman, Trademark MMA, joined by my fellow matchmaking confidant, Jordan Colbert. Jay Colbert, MMA. Jordan, how was UFC Boise? You have a good chance to watch the fights?
Yeah, Max, it was a great card. The return of Junior Dos Santos, the return of guys like Mendez. Great event. I really enjoyed it. How about yourself?
Yeah, had a great time watching it. You know, a little bit longer for a fight night. A lot of fights went to the decision, but nonetheless, some very close matchmaking, and that's what we love to do here is predict what's next for everyone on the card, and excited to do it. So, without further ado, let's dive right in here. You mentioned Junior Dos Santos comes back from the USADA suspension. First fight in over a year, his last fight being that loss to Stipe Miocic in the UFC 211 main event, I believe. Junior Dos Santos picks up the unanimous decision here over Blagoy Ivanov, the former World Series of Fighting heavyweight champion. Dos Santos now re-enters the UFC rankings. I believe he's at number 7 now. Jordan, what do you like for Junior Dos Santos?
Yeah, man, been a long time since we got to see JDS throw some leather in there. I liked his performance. Didn't get one of those vintage KOs, but kind of hard to expect that coming back from such a lengthy suspension. One fight I like for him next is Tai Tuivasa. I think Ty's a banger. JDS is a banger. I think that would be a great main event for UFC Adelaide over there in December. Great fight against a young up-and-comer. See if JDS still has it in him to be a title contender.
That's the fight to make, in my opinion, too. Tai Tuivasa got past the stern veteran test in our Andrei Arlovsky UFC Adelaide fight night. Needs a big main event. It's unlikely that the champion Robert Whittaker would be on that card, especially dealing with the injuries and about to coach the Ultimate Fighter. So that's the fight to make, that main event. That's a great slot. Now, what do you think about a possible matchup with Francis Ngannou coming off that loss to Derek Lewis at UFC 226?
So that was my second matchup that I had slated for JDS. It was a matchup that was supposed to happen in the past before JDS's suspension. I think it still makes sense now. I'd love to see it happen if he doesn't get that Tuivasa fight.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate either of those matchups. I'd love to see JDS, Tai Tuivasa headline that Adelaide card, but Francis Ngannou kind of in a weird position here. A fight with Junior Dos Santos appears to make sense there. Now, on the flip side, Blagoy Ivanov hung tough, wasn't finished or anything, made it through 5 rounds. His only loss coming into this fight was against Alexander Volkov, something I guess I didn't realize going in. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I'm not sure he actually ended up in the UFC rankings, although those are always up for many debate on whether or not they actually mean anything or whether or not they do pretty well. One fighter I liked for him was Justin Willis, sitting at number 15 in the rankings, unbeaten at heavyweight since joining the UFC. Tough to I kind of gauge a sense because most of the top 15 of the heavyweight divisions booked up, or in the case kind of in limbo here, holding out for the potential for Daniel Cormier, who his next fight is going to be as the heavyweight champion. I like AK's Justin Willis. I think both guys will come exchange in the center, and we could have a good slugfest there. Blagoy Ivanov, no stranger to absolutely letting his hands go. We saw some great wars in the World Series of Fighting. One that comes to mind was against Josh Copeland. But I like that Willis fight. Anything else you'd like for Blagoy Ivanov as a sophomore UFC outing?
Yeah, I got to say, I really like that Justin Willis fight. Another one that came to mind for me was the loser of the upcoming main event of the Russia card between Mark Hunt and Alexei Oleinik. I think that would be a great matchup, kind of sticks to the UFC's plan of matching losers with losers and winners with winners there. And I think it would make for another great heavyweight bout.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that either. And Blagoy Ivanov certainly proving he can handle himself against the upper echelon of the division or anyone in those UFC rankings. We'll jump around a little bit here. Another man that returned, you touched on, Chad Money Mendez. First fight since December of 2015, coming off a USADA suspension. Man, did he impress. He got Miles Jury out of there quick. First round finish. Now, Chad Mendez jumps back into the UFC rankings here. He's now at featherweight. He sits at number 7, previously unranked. And Chad Mendez, a lot of interesting options now that you have another top-tier competitor in the upper echelon of that featherweight division. Where do you think Chad Mendez goes from here?
Yeah, Max, Chad Mendez coming off of that 2-year suspension. returned right to form, looked like he never left, knocking out Miles Jury in the first round. He called for a top 5 guy. I'm inclined to see him get one coming off of a performance like that. A matchup I like for him is the winner of Cub Swanson and Renato Moicano. I think that's a fresh matchup, a good matchup for either guy, and one that would make sense as maybe another fight night headliner.
Yeah, that's a great fight, and that's actually what we put in our Monday morning Matchmaker article on MMA Today. So be sure to check that out in addition to downloading and subscribing to this podcast on the MMA Today podcast network. That's definitely an option. The man that sits a slot ahead of him, Josh Emmett, is unbooked. However, teammates at Team Alpha Male, the man that sits one slot behind him, Mirsad Bektic, also unbooked. Should he not get that fight? It's tough to call, man. Chad Mendes, you could really go anywhere from here. But I think the fight to make, agreed. Renato Moicano versus Cub Swanson winner, or even potentially the Chan Sung Jung Frankie Edgar winner if that fight actually does come to fruition as well.
I like that one as well.
Miles Jury takes the loss here after first 2 outings in the UFC featherweight division, successful. He really never got the chance to get off his game. I like him to take on a fellow defeated party from UFC Boise and Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins now drops to number 13 in the rankings, had his win streak halted by the surging Alexander Volkanovski. Miles Jury, Darren Elkins, I think both guys have a very well-rounded skill set. And for Jury, it's a little bit of chance of a redemption at Team Alpha Male. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that fight as well. Another fight I like for Jury is actually the loser of the upcoming matchup between Andre Feely and Michael Johnson. I think that's a good fight. Both guys sitting outside of the top 15 right now, I believe. Jury's probably going to be a fringe guy coming off of that Mendes loss. But that gives them a chance to get right back in the rankings with the win over one of those 2 guys.
Yeah, and that'd be interesting. Michael Johnson and Miles Jury fought, I believe it was 2012 at lightweight, but now they've kind of had their careers have kind of had ups and downs since then. Would be fun to see those 2 run it back, that's for sure. Now, one just touched on Darren Elkins, the damage. He drops his winning streak, falls to Alexander Volkanovski. Anything else you like for Darren Elkins, Team Alpha Male guy, off this loss? Yeah,
Darren Elkins was coming into the fight with Volkanovski on a very good streak, being underrated, it seemed, by the UFC matchmakers, wasn't getting that top 5 guy, even after putting together such a string of victories. One fight I like for him, another guy coming off a loss, but still a top 10 fighter, is Ricardo Lamas. Guy kind of on that fringe. We're not sure if he's going to be a contender anymore. Still a top 10 guy for sure, top 15 guy for sure. But a win for either guy plants him right back in that top 10 category and sets him up for another big fight.
Yeah, agreed. Ricardo Lamas, he may have a few losses in his recently. However, he's always going to be a perennial top 10 fighter. He's proven himself against the top of the division there. I actually like that Ricardo Lamas fight for Volkanovski, sitting there at 11-12 in the match in the rankings. Both guys now, Ricardo Lamas unbooked at the moment. But Elkins, you're going to get a great fight out of him no matter what. And props to him taking a fight against an unranked guy after riding that big 6-fight winning streak. He'll go in there with anybody, and shout out to him. He's never in a boring fight. Now, Volkanovski, man, how impressive did he look? Probably looking at that UFC Adelaide card, like you said, maybe in a co-main event spot, maybe a main card spot. Lamas' name thrown out there, but also you got Yair Rodriguez and Zabit Magomed Sharipov set to go to battle at UFC 228. Would be a little bit of a quick turnaround for the winner there, but rankings-wise, that might work out. Mirsad Bektic on book at number 8. What do you like for Volkanovski, Jordan?
Yeah, you just said it. I really like a fight with Mirsad Bektic. They've had the same opponents, Darren Elkins. Mirsad Bektic couldn't get it done after dominating the first 2.5 rounds. Volkanovski was able to stick in there and get it done against a tough opponent in Darren Elkins. Mirsad Bektic has kind of shot the rankings after that win against Ricardo Lamas. And I think him and Volkanovski are right there as 2 guys that are definite future contenders in the featherweight division. I like to see them go at it, and the winner probably gets a top 5 guy.
Yeah, that's a great fight too. Volkanovski too, if you want to start building a rivalry against Team Alpha Male, that's not the team I'd want to pick on. But if that is the case, you got both Josh Emmett and Chad Mendes that are now unbooked as well. So a lot of fun, interesting options at 145 pounds, that's for sure.
Yeah, to cap on that, he called out Chad Mendes I don't hate that fight. Chad Mendes didn't seem too inclined to take that fight. He seems to want a top 5 guy, but I got to say, I don't hate the idea of it.
No, and it certainly would be a competitive fight. Volkanovski has proven that he's ready for the top of that division right now.
Yeah.
The evening's co-main event, another Team Alpha male competitor, Super Sage Northcutt, faced some early adversity against Zach the Barbarian Otto, but ultimately got it done, got him out of there in I believe it was the second round. Sage Northcutt back at 170 pounds now. Welterweight, one of the largest divisions in the UFC. A lot of different options you could go with. But one of the fights that really I have in my eye on is against Tony Martin, American Top Team's Tony Martin. I think it's that time where you stop matching up Sage Northcutt with UFC upstarts or the very, little-known UFC competitors. I think you got to throw him in there with a bona fide competitor and in this new division. Tony Martin, a guy that's come up from lightweight, had his welterweight debut, a victory this past April over Kaita Nakamura. Another guy who's very well-versed in the grappling realm. Really good takedown, something that Sage Northcutt has been prone to in the past. Really got to throw him into the fire. It's about that time. He's had 6 UFC fights now, or I believe 8 UFC fights, sitting at 6-2. This is the time to do it. But, Jordan, what do you like for Super Sage?
Yeah, a lot of people have thrown up a matchup with Mike Perry, oddly enough, for Sage Northcutt. I got to say, I don't like that fight. I agree with you as far as him being thrown into the fire, as to say, but that's a little too hot for my likes right now. A fight I like for him is with Li Jingliang. Another guy who likes to throw a heavy leather in there. Has that loss to Jake Matthews with the controversial eye pokes and whatnot. But he's rebounded nicely from that fight. I believe he's put together 2 wins since then. A bona fide guy in the welterweight division, a knockout artist, someone Sage is going to be able to go in there and stand toe-to-toe with and really test that chin and test his stand-up moxie. I think that's a great fight to happen next.
Yeah, the Leech, always fun to step in there. So that's definitely one to think about. I like that fight. And on the back end, Milwaukee's native Zach Otto had some early shining moments, but ultimately finished again. Really, I could see Otto getting booked against pretty much anyone in the welterweight division. I threw Ricky Rainey's name out there, another fellow veteran. But Otto alternated wins and losses in his last 4. He may be on the UFC chopping block in that crowded welterweight division. What do you think?
I got to say, I agree with you, man. He might be on the chopping block coming up. A fight I like for him next is against Craig White, a guy who came in short notice against Neil Magny. Usually guys that come in short notice like that, they're going to give him another shot, probably one more shot. A guy like Zach Otto, who's probably on the chopping block as it is. This is a loser leaves town match. No better way to put it.
Exactly. Same situation with Rainey, coming in on short notice, getting his second UFC opportunity, but most likely loser leaves town and not coming back. Man, also another welterweight fight. Talk about a unique finish. Nico Price, the hybrid. Man, something for the highlight reels for real. The hammer fist from the bottom after weaving Randy Brown's head throughout his underneath his shin. Something we'll be seeing in highlight reels from years to come. Nico Price put together quite a bit of – he has one UFC loss against Vicente Luque, another surging welterweight. A name you mentioned earlier I like is Jake Matthews. Now 4-1 with 1 no contest in the UFC is Nico Price. Matthews unbeaten at welterweight since his return. It really seems like one of these a winner between these two competitors would propel somebody in the top 15. But any other matchups for the hybrid Nico Price that you think really put on a show for the fans?
Yeah, I like that matchup you just threw out there, Max. That's kind of a gateway to the top 15 for both guys. Another matchup I like for Nico Price, Curtis Millender, a guy who's coming to the UFC, 2-0, really, really long, lengthy striker. Another one, probably a gateway to the top 15 for either guy.
Yeah, Millender, another impressive win over Max Griffin. Man, there's quite a few names just circulating right outside that top 15 that, man, any of these competitors would be fun fighters to watch. Seer Bahadur Zada, another name that comes to mind.
To throw one more out there, we just spoke of Mike Perry with Sage Northcutt. We don't like that fight, but Mike Perry versus Nico Price would be an amazing fight.
That'd be fun to watch. Bilal Muhammad recently matched up with Eliezer Zaleski dos Santos, but 2 more guys sitting right outside those top 15 that would make a fun fight. Now, Randy Brown stumbles in this one. He's lost 2 out of his past 3. Hate to say it, but and he might be facing another situation where he's in a do or die spot in his next fight, and one that he could go against Tim the Dirty Bird Means. Guys lost 3 in a row, but recently re-upped with the UFC. I guess he has a fan friendly style that has the UFC brass as fans of him, but a lot of different options for Randy Brown too. He's probably his stock's a little bit higher than Zach Otto's, but where do you think Randy Brown goes from here?
Yeah, I don't think he's right there on the chopping block yet, especially coming from Dana White's looking for a fight series. I think he's going to get a little more leeway, but he's getting close. A fight I like for him is Alex Garcia out of TriStar, another guy who's kind of alternated wins and losses in the UFC. Had some good performances, some nice knockouts, but hasn't really put it all together, just like Randy Brown. Good fight.
Great fight. I agree with that too. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go with the women. The women's featherweight fight on the card. Kat Zingano finally returning to the win column for the first time since 2014, knocking off Marion Renault, who had also put together a nice win streak coming in. Zingano now sitting at number 6. Finally kind of has her footing now, what it appears. Now, she's alluded that she's can fight in both the UFC featherweight or the UFC bantamweight division. One of the fights I like for her and is Germaine de Randamie, former UFC featherweight champion, but I had a hard time picking this one out. So, Jordan, I'm going to turn it to you. What did you like for Alpha Cat? Because I really had a hard time putting up a good opponent for her.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Kat Zingano for the longest time. She's a brawler. Another brawler I can see her getting is Raquel Pennington, coming off of that Amanda Nunes fight. Got beat up in that fight really badly, but she's a brawler. She always comes to fight. Coming off of a title fight, I'm sure she's still going to get a top 5 or so opponent. I think Kat Zingano would be good for that. If not that, I know I'm sorry, for the Adelaide card, Megan Anderson.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Megan Anderson said she wants to be on the Adelaide card. Kat Zingano is interested in taking a fight at 145. I think that's the perfect matchup to get for either of them.
Man, that's a fun fight. That's a great idea there, Jordan. I like that. This UFC Adelaide card's really coming together on this podcast. That's for sure.
It really is, right? We've kind of thrown matchups there for the last week or so.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, Marion Renault, 41 years old now. However, a very thin division, so definitely opportunity to climb right back to the top. I kind of had an interesting thought, but I'll let you go first. Marion Renault, where does she go?
Yeah, she's had some good wins in the UFC, but also had her fair share of losses. She's got an exciting style, though, and that sits well with the UFC. So I don't think she's in any danger of going anywhere despite the age. A fighter like for Lena Landsberg, another fighter who tries to bang really, really nice elbows in there, and got a fair share of knockouts to her name. I think those two would make for a nice brawl.
Yeah, Lena Landsberg, you really don't know what you're going to get out of her because she's had some moments like in Aspen Ladd were just absolutely dominated, but her last fight against Gina Mazzani really showed some growth and improvement. Marion Renault, if she does get a competitor closer to the top 10, then I'd say maybe Aspen Ladd, maybe the winner of Betch Correa and Irene Aldana. However, she's already fought Betch Correa, so tough to see where she goes. Lucy Pudilova's name I've seen thrown out there too. But, man, the women's bantamweight seems like they're losing fighters left and right, whether they're dropping down to flyweight, whether they're going up to featherweight.
Kind of in a weird spot right now.
Really is a weird spot there. Now, meanwhile, the women's flyweight division seems to be flourishing, and really impressive performance from Liz Carmouche coming off her recent outing, a controversial loss to Alexis Davis, but she gets the win over Jennifer Maia, a very highly touted flyweight coming in out of the Chuta Box camp in Brazil. Carmouche, she's not showing any signs of deteriorating. She's not going anywhere. Now that she's put on another win, back off a win, and while the UFC, you mentioned the win-win, the loss-loss, I think she matches up really well with Lauren Murphy. And both these competitors fought in 2015, a really close back-and-forth fight. I'd love to see that one both in their natural weight class of 125. But a lot of good options for Liz Carmouche. Who do you like?
I like that fight as well, man. But another fight I like is the loser of the title fight that was just announced today between Nico Montano and Shevchenko. I think that would be a good rebound fight for whoever loses that title matchup going down at UFC 228, and also would set up Liz Carmouche with the win for being right there in the title conversation.
Man, good thought, especially that coming off that big announcement today, UFC 228, Valentina Shevchenko challenging for the UFC Flyweight Championship against Nico Montano. Looking forward to that fight for sure.
Definitely.
Now, how about Jennifer Maia coming off the unanimous decision loss, a very pretty much one-sided defeat? She's got to get back to the drawing board. She's going to have to put together a win streak in this tough division. Where do you think it starts for her?
Yeah, coming into the UFC, I was really high on Jennifer Maia. I thought she was going to go in there right away and contend for the title. Looks like it may take her a little while to get her footing. You know, a lot of people get the UFC jitters going into the big show. I think she can rebound though, and a fight like for her is against Barb Honchak. Another fighter who a lot of people thought were going to come in and kind of run away with the show and get that title. Didn't happen in that case, but I think both fighters can still be talented contenders in that division, and this is step one for getting one of them back there.
Yeah, Barb Honchak, great fight. Think that makes a lot of sense. Another name I saw out there, Justine Kish. She plans on staying at 125 pounds. Either one. Jennifer Maia, though, has a lot of potential, and let's hope she can kind of return to that form we saw in Invicta for sure.
Yep.
Women's strawweights were in action too. Jessica Aguilar picking up her first UFC win. She took a decision from Jody Escobel out of the Jackson Wink camp. Jessica Aguilar, man, it was finally good to see her actually put together an offense and really get a chance to showcase her skills. What do you think about that fight, and what do you think about for the former WSOF? I believe she was the strawweight champion there, but
yeah, WSOF.
What do you like for that?
Jessica Aguilar, another fighter coming over from the regional circuit that's kind of had a little bit of trouble finding her footing inside of the UFC. Finally got a win after being, I believe she had an injury for a while, right, which kept her sidelined for a while.
Yeah.
I think she's going to have to build up a real streak coming off of 2 losses and then finally getting that win. I feel like her is Poliana Botelho, another fighter, put together a couple of wins. Not really a contender yet, but people are looking out for her. And I think that's a good fight to get either fighter on the map in that top 15 conversation.
Botelho makes a lot of sense. Upcoming in 2 weeks, UFC 227. I like the winner of this matchup between J.J. Aldrich and Poliana Viana. Aguilar, a very well-rounded and experienced fighter, and I think both of those, younger up-and-comer type fighters between Aldrich and Viana, that should make a really interesting clash there. Can put that kind of anywhere towards the end of 2018, early 2019. Now, Jody Escobel drops to 0-2. She is in a women's strawweight division, so there doesn't necessarily have to battle for roster spots more so than maybe some of those lightweights and welterweights for the men. But do you think she's in danger of losing her job, or if not, where does she go from here?
She's on the cusp, but I don't think she's going to lose her job. Like you said, not a lot of depth in that division. I think she'll get at least one more opportunity. We've seen some girls go 0-4 in that division and remain with the organization. So a fighter like for Amanda Bobby Cooper, another fighter, she got like a 4-4 overall record. like we're talking the division, it doesn't have a lot of depth right now. A lot of girls are still trying to find their place in that division, but the loser of this is definitely in danger of getting.
Cooper, always fun to watch. Very exciting for the fan. Has been on, I believe, 3 pay-per-view main cards in her 5-fight UFC.
He brings it.
Jody Escobel and Cooper, that's a fun fight to think about. Much better than my suggestion of Shiri Kondo. I actually like that Cooper fight a lot better. We'll go with that.
Awesome.
Fight of the night honors for UFC Boise went to debuting and re-debuting fighters. So Raoni Barcelos taking on Kurt Holobaugh, who did fight in the UFC in 2013, making his debut in his second UFC stint. Man, this was a fun fight to watch, and what an impressive finish by Raoni Barcelos, former, I believe, RFA featherweight champion. But after being on the sidelines for nearly 2 years, really showing no signs of ring rust, and I think you got to throw him in with someone else right on a roll. How about Julio Arce, Team Tiger Schulman? 2 straight wins in the UFC, finishing his last outing against Daniel Tamor. Barcelos now, I believe, is 12-1. Could be a really fun clash there. It could be in Brazil if you want to give Barcelos the home crowd advantage. Any of the upcoming New York cards for Arce. Really any fight night card across the globe, this would be a good addition. But Barcelos, any thoughts on him, where he goes from here?
Yeah, man, that was an action-packed fight. Barcelos is a real prospect in that featherweight division. I see bright things ahead for him. A fight I like for him is against another guy coming back from a little bit of a layoff in Arnold Allen, a prospect a lot of people liked coming out of the UK. I got a very, very good record. He's very, very young. This is a fight that will have the winner looked at as a future top 15 guy for sure, if you ask me.
Yeah, Arnold Allen. Man, he was dangerously close to losing that fight, I believe, in May against Mads Burnell. Yeah, at the end of May, that was he was on the cusp of suffering that first UFC loss. Pulls out that front choke at the end. I actually like Arnold for UFC Boise winner Rick Glenn.
Oh, wow, that's a good fight too.
He's a veteran, 29 years old, but has had over 35 fights. And Rick Glenn, someone that once he's mentioned in interviews before, really wants those hungry up-and-comers. He's called out guys like Volkanovski before, called out Jeremy Kennedy prior to him signing with Brave, called out Enrique Barzola. So I think he would, by all means, love that fight. Now, Kurt Holobaugh on the flip side, man, a lot of people were high on him. A lot of people were excited about his re-entry into the UFC coming off that really brutal knockout finish over Matt Bessette on the Contender Series last season. Where do you think Kurt Holobaugh stands?
Yeah, Kurt Holobaugh. Difficult to say, man. He, coming off of that Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, had a lot of hype behind him, getting back in there in the UFC. It's tough to say, man. He had that brief stint. Didn't he have something going on with the USADA?
Yeah, so the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, it was unclear that organization did not follow the USADA rules, and so he actually received an IV after the weight cut. And
that's what it was. Okay.
So it was a little unclear. He did get a suspension, but apparently he's still in good standing.
Okay, yeah. A fight I like for him, Alex Caceres, coming off of a win. Alex Caceres is a guy who always brings it. Win or lose. He doesn't have the best record in the UFC, but I think he's going to stick around for a long time just because of his exciting, fan-friendly style. Kurt Holobaugh may be coming off of a loss, but I think he's still a very talented fighter and a potential top 15 down the road. And a fight with Alex Caceres will get him right back on track.
Yeah, Holobaugh, see where he goes from here, but he's showing a willingness to exchange with anyone on the feet. Brandon Davis, Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fight, could be a fun back-and-forth stand-up battle. Now, funny you mentioned Caceres because I actually like Caceres for someone else on this card. However, it's a real close call. Dennis Bermudez, another split decision loss. Now he's lost 4 straight, 6 out of 8. The last 3 have been split decision losses. This one seemed a little bit more controversial than the last 2. But should Bermudez get another shot in the UFC, I think Caceres makes a lot of sense. Both those guys, veterans, really bring it for his, willing to go the full distance, but also have shown the ability to finish. Now, does he keep his job? Now, he's lost 4 straight and with 3 split decisions. Jordan, do you think he stays on the roster or is he gone?
I think he keeps his job, man. Like you said, it was a very, very controversial decision, split decision. I had him winning that fight personally. I think he's going to keep his job. He comes in and he brings it every time. He's a very exciting fighter. I think he'll definitely get one more opportunity. Dana has a soft spot for his tough guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear
what
that.
I like for him is Kyle Bochniak, a guy who just brought it in a very, very good fight against Zabit Magomedsharipov. Yeah, but got to say, this is do or die for Bermudez, split decisions or not. He's got to get a win.
Yeah, Bochniak. You could match Kyle Bochniak up with just about anybody in that division. He'll put on a fun fight. I would absolutely pay to see him square off with Dennis Bermudez there. Now, the only men's bantamweight fight on the card, Alejandro Diablito Perez. Or actually, no, he's Turbo now. Sorry, that's his old nickname. Alejandro Turbo Perez now gets the former WEC champ Eddie Wineland out of there, unanimous decision. He's put together a 7-fight unbeaten streak, now sits at number 12 in the rankings, quietly flying under the radar. Mexico's Alejandro Perez. What do you think he gets? Does he get a top 10 fighter? Does he get a top 15 fighter? Does he get somebody unranked? What do you think?
He's in a weird place. His fight was super, super close. I actually had him losing that fight. The win streak continues. Like you said, 7 in a row. He's going to get a top guy. There's no way he can coming off of 7 wins. I like him versus the winner of Pedro Munhoz and Brett Johns. I think that would be a good fight for him. I don't see him moving too far into the top 10 for his next opponent. One fight I sort of like just because of the clash of styles was with John Lineker because they both like to stand and bang. John Lineker's kind of in a weird place right now, too. A lot of the guys that he should be fighting are booked right now, so that could be a fight that he gets.
Yeah, John Lineker, like we talked about last week, whether he gets a fight with Rafael Sunsao, there's really not a – he's kind of in that weird place too.
Yeah.
But something you mentioned, Alejandro Perez, this one was a little controversial too. Many thought that Wineland actually won. That being said, I think Alejandro Perez gets Rob Font. So a guy coming off a loss, actually, but also sitting neck and neck in the rankings. The two were supposed to square off, I believe, in December of 2016 in the Ultimate Fighter finale. Injury knocked Perez out and was replaced by Matt Schnell. That fight makes a whole lot of sense to me, just as far as establishing a top 10 guy, because there are quite a few matchups already made for the UFC's bantamweight division. Now, Wineland, another veteran we see take another loss here, Eddie Wineland. But like you said, the UFC has a soft spot for tough guys who bring it and will always exchange. I like Eddie Wineland and Brian Boom Kelleher. I think both those two match up pretty well and be a fun stand-up war. But any other thoughts for Wineland? Do you think he's still going to fight? If so, who?
Yeah, definitely. I think Wineland still has a lot in the tank. I really like that Kelleher matchup. That's actually one that I had written down. Another one that I had written down, though, is sort of this makes for sort of a passing of the guard fight with Sean O'Malley. Get him in there against a veteran. Yeah, get him in there against a veteran. Let's see how he does against a guy who's going to stand and bang with him. See if he can take out someone that has much more octagon experience than he does.
Oh, man. That's the fight I want to see. Just thinking about that. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
O'Malley and oh, man, Wineland and O'Malley. Great, because that's a great positional battle for Sean O'Malley, whether he can get by someone who's not going to be fazed by his, hair and his games and
all the antics.
His persona. Yeah, no, great matchmaking there, Jordan. Now, the last division we have on the radar, UFC flyweight division, two matchups here. One, very controversial finish in Said Nurmagomedov picks up the split decision over Justin Scoggins, but man, it seemed like the Twitter universe exploded after that decision. My man Davidson Baker on the Bottom Line podcast really ripped into the judge. It was his debut judge performance for mixed martial arts. We had never officially judged a mixed martial arts event before, the one that had Said Nurmagomedov winning all 3 rounds. But nonetheless, he gets the win. I think a matchup for him, Ulka Sasaki. Both guys have a shared victory over Scoggins now, controversial or not. Nurmagomedov didn't seem too phased or didn't seem to have too many octagon jitters. So Ulka Sasaki now training alongside Aljamain Sterling and Sarah Longo and Weidman Longo MMA up there, Law MMA. So those two, I think, match up pretty well. But Nurmagomedov gets the win. What do you think he's next for him?
Yeah, like you said, controversial fight. I had him losing to Scoggins. But nevertheless, he's a very good prospect. He's got a good record, a good grappling base. He's big for the division. I think he still has a shot to go places, controversial decision or not. I like that Sasaki fight. That's one I had written down as well. Another one I like is Matt Schnell.
Danger.
Yeah, danger Matt Schnell. A middling guy, top 15 potential. Just like I said, Nurmagomedov gives him sort of a chance to redeem himself, even though he got that win, and give a bit of a better performance because, like I said, I do still think he has potential to be a top 15 ranked fighter.
Yeah, Schnell now winner of 2 straight, so would make a lot of sense booking those two coming off back-to-back wins there. Now, Scoggins, another one whose record doesn't necessarily suggest exactly the types of performances he's had, has been caught in chokes, I believe, 3 times, and now this very controversial split decision loss. Justin Scoggins, does his stock rise? Does his stock fall? Is he going to get a good fight next? What do you think?
I think he'll get a favorable matchup. I don't think his stock is going anywhere, rise or fall. I think anyone who saw the fight knows that he probably won that fight. He's a very talented striker, a smart striker, comes from that karate background. A fight I like for him is against Brandon Moreno, another guy who kind of got rushed into the top 15. Got some big fights and took some disappointing losses, but he's got a lot of potential. It's a great Clash of Styles matchup. Moreno is a very long grappler for that division. Let's see if Scoggins can kind of hold him off and keep him at his range like he was able to do for most of that fight against Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, Moreno now has dropped his last 2, so it would make a lot of sense from that standpoint. Another bout that came to mind, Joby Sanchez Didn't have his re-debut on the UFC, did not go his way, choked out by Roberto Sanchez. But these two were actually supposed to fight in December of 2015. Didn't injury knock Scoggins out, and Sanchez ended up fighting John Herrera. But those two, I think, match up pretty well and are kind of similar standings in the division. Now, on the other side of the flyweight division, a pretty impressive back-and-forth battle here from Mark De La Rosa and Elias Garcia. De La Rosa picking up a rear naked choke victory just a week after his wife, Montana De La Rosa, picks up a rear naked choke victory. De La Rosa looked a lot more comfortable at flyweight than he did at bantamweight, but De La Rosa definitely wasn't dominating the fight by any means, but did get him out of there, did get Garcia out of there, gets the win here. De La Rosa, where does he go? What's his next fight?
Yeah, the De La Rosas, man. How about that for a power couple, right?
Crazy.
A fight I like for him next is the winner between a matchup that was actually just announced today for UFC 228 between Ryan Benoit and Roberto Sanchez. Two guys that bring it, especially Ryan Benoit, a very talented striker, a lot of power for that division. You're going to see a lot of six scrambles in that one.
Yeah, Benoit and Roberto Sanchez, both are Texas guys. Mark De La Rosa, also a Texas guy, but all three of them train in different parts of the state and with different camps. I don't hate either of those matchups there. One that came to mind, recent UFC signee Jordan Espinosa, fresh off his contract awarding of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series last week. So De La Rosa kind of go from one fine from the Dana White looking for a fight series to another fine from the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. I think both those two would put on a nice back-and-forth battle. Now, Elias Garcia, the cousin of Anthony and Sergio Pettis, he stumbles in his UFC debut, but a young guy comes from a great camp in Roufusport. No reason to believe he doesn't have a bright future, and I think you give him someone coming off a couple losses or coming off a loss. Ashkan Mokhtarian came to name. I know he is still on the roster despite going 0-2 in his first two UFC appearances. But Jordan, do you agree? Do you think Garcia has a bright future, and where do you think is the next matchup for him?
Yeah, I think he can bounce back. It was a tough matchup. He took a loss, but I think he can still have a bright future inside the UFC. A fight I like for him is against a guy you threw out earlier in Joby Sanchez, a guy who came back to the UFC after getting that shot on the Tuesday Night Contender Series and stumbled once again. But Joby Sanchez is another guy who I think can have a bright future. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Yeah, I agree with that fight too. But really excited to see what Garcia can bring. But nonetheless, man, we rolled through that fight card. We cleared through it. That was fun, man. Any final thoughts? Anything for UFC Boise? Looking forward to UFC Hamburg this weekend, that's for sure. Anything else? Final thoughts, Jordan? If not, we can get this wrapped up.
No, Max. Like I said, it was a really fun night of fights. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next for these fighters, especially the return of Junior Dos Santos. That was really, really fun to watch.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. And, man, that would be fun if we saw some of these fights on the UFC Adelaide card get made. That would make both of our days, that's for sure.
A lot of great matchups that could be made for that card, man.
All right, well, thanks, everyone, for tuning in. This is the Matchmaker podcast on the MMA Today podcast network. Catch all of our content on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, make sure to check out MMA-today.com. Make that your homepage for MMA news and up-to-the-minute featured interviews and prospect drives and all kinds of stuff we got here. Jordan, where can the people find you these days?
Yeah, thanks, Max. You can find me on Twitter, J. Colbert MMA, contributing to MMAtoday.com as well as SureDog.com and BJPen.com. So look out for any of my articles, guys.
Yeah, a lot of good content out there. Make sure to follow Jordan. Max Freedman, Trademark MMA on Twitter. All my content is on MMAtoday.com. Looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully next week, and talk UFC Hamburg, if not definitely after UFC 227. But it was a pleasure as always, Jordan, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks once again, Max. Looking forward to it.